everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the Comic Book Syndicate's newest podcast, tentatively titled Taped Crusaders. This is a podcast dedicated to older, vintage TV shows and movies starring superheroes, mainly focusing on pre-2007, which is when the Comic Book Syndicate began. We've got a lot of stuff to go through, so we're going to jump right in this week to review The Adventures of Superman pilot episode with George Reeves. And we are joined by our regular co-hosts, Joshua Murr-VELL and Bex Luthor.
What's up?
Hello. Welcome back,
Glad
everybody.
I can make it. Yeah,
It's been a long 7 days since we ended Here Comes the Spider-Cast.
that's right.
I hope you
I
guys
still
Had
hear
our
it
mourning
now.
period, and yeah, it's great.
We've moved on. Goodbye, Marvel. Hello, DC.
We're all
Ignore the
wearing black
Spider-Mans.
still, but
There's like Spider-Mans in the corner of my screen. Ignore those.
So, and just so everybody knows, we will be covering both DC and Marvel, as well as other, companies, other superheroes. Like, I'm looking at my list here, and I don't want to give anything away, but pretty much any superhero TV show or movie you can imagine, we're going to eventually cover. So it's going to be a lot of fun, including things that maybe were on TV once, maybe were in theaters once, maybe were never in theaters, right? Maybe were never aired, but you can get your hands on bootleg copies of them. So,
well,
You
I'm
can get your hands
excited.
on legitimate copies of them to review for the internet so that nobody gets in trouble.
there you go. That's what I meant to say.
Right.
You can find every episode at comicbooksyndicate.com, but we'll talk more about that later. But first, we're going to talk about the Adventures of Superman pilot episode. And I'm just going to give a quick little intro for this show. So just for anyone that doesn't know, Superman is my favorite superhero. So I kind of saw scattered episodes of this when I was a kid, but I do own the first 2 seasons on DVD. The first 2 seasons are shot in black and white. The remaining, I think it's 4 or 5 seasons are shot in color, and the color episodes are a little bit more kid-friendly than the first 2 seasons. The pilot episode first aired on September 19th, 1952, and the last episode aired on April 28th, 1958. So here, I've done a little bit of research here, so I'm just going to give a quick rundown for some of the facts I found out. This was the very first television show based on a DC comic book, and I will confirm there would not be a Marvel TV series for decades after this one, and it was probably it would have been
Incredible
the Hulk. Spider-Man. Actually, I believe the Spider-Man pilot aired first, if you can believe that. Then the Hulk.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, so the precursor.
Was Japanese Spider-Man before that or no?
I was just gonna say I was looking for that.
It was the same, like maybe 6 months to a year later, but it was almost
okay.
at the same time, which is surprising. So
Wow.
the precursor to this TV show was actually a feature film called Superman and the Mole Men. We could have reviewed that instead, but I decided to review this because this actually shows Superman's origin. But Superman and the Mole Men was all the same cast, and it was actually re-edited and used as a 2-parter in season 1 of this show, and it was renamed The Unknown People. So it's included. I think both versions are included in the DVD box set. They filmed the entire first year, 26 episodes, and then didn't air it for a full year because they couldn't find a sponsor. At the time, they didn't know how popular the show was going to be. So Kellogg's cereal decided to sponsor the show, so they started running it, and it became this massive hit. And so obviously they wanted to make a second season, but the actress that played Lois Lane, Phyllis Coates, was no longer available because she'd committed to other projects. So they recast Lois Lane with Noelle Neal, who had played Lois Lane in the Superman serials from the 40s, which starred Kirk Alyn as Superman. A little quick note, none of Superman's supervillains appear in the show, including Lex Luthor. None of them. Brainiac, nobody. Most of the villains were just gangsters and stuff like that. The only things that appeared from the comics would be the characters Lois, Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, who was actually created in the radio show, and Green Kryptonite. Those, as well as Krypton and Jor-EL and Lara. Those are the only things that carried over from the comics. Also, we should point out that while Superman's parents are included in the show, I'm not sure if you noticed, their names are not Jonathan and Martha. They are Sarah and Eben. I think that's how you pronounce it, Eben. Those were the names used in the novel, The Adventures of Superman. In the comics, their names were not consistent until the Superboy series began. Before that, they were, mom and dad, ma and pa, different things. And so anyway, they weren't consistent for a long time. And I believe that covers all of my research. So we can jump into this first episode. Actually, we didn't even plan this out before we started talking, but would anyone else besides me like to summarize what happens in this episode? Because I've been talking already for like 5 minutes. If not, I can keep talking.
Yeah, I mean, I could try. You might need to jump in and...
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Josh, why don't you summarize what happens in Superman on Earth?
Okay, so this episode, we start off on Krypton, and it's kind of revealing what happened to Superman and the planet and how he came to Earth. So we see that there's this meeting in this council, and Jor-El, which is Superman's father, is kind of in this meeting talking about how he's been conducting these experiments, and he is realizing now that all of these weird things are happening on Krypton because the planet is slowly getting closer and closer to the sun. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't know how long they have until it's unstoppable and the planet is just going to be destroyed. And he's like, it could be years, it could be months, it could be days, it could be hours. We don't know. Mm-hmm. They all kind of laugh at him and shoo him away. So he goes home and he's talking to his wife. And he's like, I've got this miniature that I've built. It's a full-on replica of the big ship that I'm gonna make.
Rocket, right?
This rocket that we're gonna use to escape the planet. And as he's explaining this, the planet starts heating up extremely fast and exploding, and he's realizing that they don't have enough time to even build this thing, and only one person can fit inside the rocket. So instead of anybody else going, they decide to wrap their infant son in a bundle and place him in the rocket and send him off to Earth. And as the rocket leaves, we see Krypton explodes, and that is the end of everybody on that planet and the planet itself. Then we cut over to Earth as we see Ma and Pa Kent driving their car, and as they're driving home, they hear this buzzing sound and they look up in the sky and they see the rocket coming to Earth and crash lands in front of them. Pa Kent, he runs over to the rocket and he hears a baby crying inside. So he does what he can to try and put out the flames, and he grabs the baby, and they decide that the best thing for them to do is to keep the baby and raise it as their own. So we kind of see Clark Kent as a child growing up. I can't remember if anything significant happens. He kind of just talks about how he feels different.
Yeah, which we'll talk. It's
stuff like that, right?
It's one scene in the kitchen of him talking to Ma about why am I different from the other kids? Why do I have these powers? And then the very next scene, it cuts to him 20 years later as a
right.
Actually, no, first, I just got to say, Pa Kent is talking about Superman or his son. Then Pa Kent has a heart attack, and in the next scene, the doctor comes out of the doorway, and Ma and Clark are there. Clark's an adult. And then you find out Pa Kent has died. So
well, he went to the store because it's his birthday.
Right. Yeah.
So she sent him to the store, and he comes back in, and he's like, "Oh, where's Clark?" And then he's like, "Oh, my heart!" Like immediately, just has a heart attack.
So after that, he decides to leave Smallville, and he moves to this big city of Metropolis. And he says goodbye to his mom, gets on the bus, and he walks in place as a montage happens around him.
I love it.
So great. He heads over to the Daily Planet, where he goes for a job interview, and Perry White kind of brushes him off, and he doesn't get an interview. So he sneaks around the outside of the building, and he crawls along the outside, like, 50 stories up, maybe even more, in this huge skyscraper. And he kind of breaks into the office where he asks for an interview again. And I think it's there they hear on the radio about a man who is dangling from a blimp, I believe it is, right?
Yeah.
And so he has the idea to change into a Superman costume, which I forgot to mention his mom made for him, which is made out of the blankets that are indestructible that he was wrapped in. That came from Krypton, and so we see Lois Lane, and who else goes with him?
Jimmy Olsen and a
Jimmy
photographer.
Olsen. Yeah,
Okay.
and another guy. Yeah.
And another guy,
Yeah.
right?
The third
So
man.
they go there to report on the situation. Superman is able to get there way faster. He flies there. He saves the guy as he's falling from the blimp, and we cut back over to the Daily Planet, and we see that he was able to save him, and he was also able to kind of get the scoop because he says that he was able to just run around the building, but it turns out he obviously just ran around the building, changed into his civilian clothes, and then ran back around to interview the guy. And Lois Lane does kind of find this fishy, and we're kind of left almost like on a little bit of a cliffhanger. We kind of get like a Lois Lane suspicious of Clark Kent as to what exactly happened, as the survivor of this accident talks about how he saw this guy in a red cape fly to save him.
Right.
And Perry White decides to hire Clark Kent, and his write up is front page of the newspaper as credits roll.
So there's a lot to talk about, but before we continue with anything, I just want to say that that what you said towards the end there was interesting, because I don't think there's ever a particular moment where Superman makes a dramatic entrance to the public and he's ever acknowledged. It's more of a gradual thing where, like, throughout the show, crooks don't know who he is. Like, who's this guy in a circus costume? You know, like, it's kind of, he's almost like an urban legend. So, which I think is kind of interesting. There's never a point where he goes public. But anyway, Becca, since you haven't said much yet, why don't we start with you and just tell us, first of all, have you ever seen the show before?
No.
Okay.
Why would I had to pay for it?
Okay. There, you know, that's what you're here for, to give a different perspective. So what did you think about this episode of this show?
First thought, Jor-El, what a hottie. Smoke show. Damn.
Okay.
Second thought, Lara, also smoke show. What a hottie. Third thought, actually kind of fun.
Yeah.
And charming in a really, like, cute kind of way of, like, oh yeah, I remember when everything was, superheroes were a lot simpler.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, obviously I'm a big fan of Superman myself. I love Superman. It's probably in my top 5. Because it pisses the edgelord boys off so much. Yeah. And I always say people who don't like Superman have never read a Superman story, at least a good one.
I agree.
And because the notion that good Boy Scout Superman is cool or interesting, some people disagree with that, and I am not one of them. I think Clark Kent is one of the most complex and interesting characters DC has ever made and will ever make. And if we Batman versus Superman, I'm Superman all the way. No, it's so fun, actually. Like, I just really enjoyed it. Just sitting down and watching. I kind of wish I had, like, a bowl of cereal. It gave me some good feelings. It was pretty funny and not meant to be, like trying to cram Superman's entire origin story into 22 minutes, plus a whole story of him, like, saving somebody. Like, his dad just gets a heart attack right away. I was watching it with my partner, and they were like, as soon as this scene showed up where Paul comes back into the house and they're talking, he was like, oh, somebody's dying for sure. Mm-hmm. And I was like, do you think so? And then he immediately had a heart attack. So that's fun. And it's, I don't know. It wasn't like, it definitely wasn't heavy or difficult to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, okay, so objectively we can say that in my opinion, the most poorly written part of the show would have been young Clark Kent sitting at the kitchen table with his mother and saying, "Why am I different from all the other boys?" They could
She's
have
like, well, you're an alien.
Well, I just wish they would have shown, like, take the camera, go outside, and have him run really fast or lift something. Like that was just poor storytelling, right? And I know that they're limited by a low budget, fine. But anyone shooting a TV show in Hollywood in 1951 could afford to take a camera and walk outside and have him lift up a car or something, like a fake car, obviously.
Yeah, I think too, jumping off of what you're saying, Mike, I think the best part about, or one of the best parts about Superman's origin and the death of Pa Kent is the fact that it's like the one thing that Superman can't do, right? It's the one thing that he can't save somebody from is like a heart attack or cancer or something like that.
Right.
So it would have been kind of cool to see him like being the superhero around the farm and like nothing is able to stop him. And then
Sure.
when that kind of shows up, it's like the one thing that he's completely helpless with.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that's the one flaw maybe of this, but it's also hard to even kind of like judge it too harshly on that because
Right.
they cram so much into it. And I think honestly, everything else is done pretty well.
I agree. I am a huge fan of old science fiction, and one of my favorite movies is Forbidden Planet. I'm not sure if you guys have ever seen it, Forbidden Planet. It's basically the prototype for Star Trek. So if you like Star Trek, please watch Forbidden Planet. But it's got that old style, narration, like in the year 2357, mankind, flying, whatever. And that's what this show starts off with like, around another star floats a planet, Krypton and all that stuff. And then you see, obviously low budget, but the council on Krypton, all wearing costumes from other movies and TV shows and serials.
Of course,
they just reuse them, right? Who cares though?
Yeah.
And like Krypton, or what's his name? Sorry, Jor-El with his like pull down piece of paper that he rolls down to show
his like map chart, and he's like, "Look, we're dying."
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And just the whole idea of like when you break it all down, it's kind of a combination of like the Bible stories of like Moses, a little bit of Moses, a little bit of Jesus, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it's just so primal. And it's funny because Josh, you mentioned like, Superman having all these powers, not being able to help his father. If you really break this down, it is so close to the first Superman movie, and I never thought of it, but it's almost like they took this episode and just expanded it, right? And it's like the same chronology. You introduce the young Clark, then his father dies, then that's when he decides to become Superman. He goes to Metropolis, he meets, it's pretty close. But yeah, overall, like, I just love. I mean, I've seen the first 2 seasons, and I know that where it goes after this, and it's almost like a film noir type vibe. So I love everything about it. But yeah, I really enjoyed this first episode. I wish they would have had more science fiction like this, like showing Krypton, like they did in the comics, always flashing back. So unfortunately, this is the last time we see Jor-El and Lara, so that's a detriment. But why don't we talk about the actors in the show? Obviously, first we have to talk about George Reeves. I mean, I love Christopher Reeve with all my heart, and he's a better actor. But George Reeves really defined what this character is, I think, for a whole generation. This show was so popular, and again, you're talking about a time when there was not 3, but I think only 2 networks at the time, because I think NBC came later. So you only have 2 networks. So virtually every kid in America is watching this show, right? Every kid. And just like the definition of that guy, that superhero, that smiling superhero that, is friends with all the kids and friends with all the adults, and everybody likes him. Like, that's the definition of Superman for me. And I think he completely embodies that. Like, Becca, what'd you think of George Reeves?
Well, it's kind of hard to tell because he doesn't really show up until the last 10 minutes of the episode, right? So I'm like going to wait and gauge maybe a little bit. But I think he was kind of like he was charming and dorky in a very unassuming way. And like, I really like the Superman outfit. It's really cheesy.
It's great. It's all you need.
I don't like I was telling Josh this when you were in the bathroom, but I don't know much about George Reeves besides he was Superman and the conspiracy theories surrounding his death. Which we could talk about if you want, or we don't have to. But like that's all I know. So I don't know him from anything else. But this is the first time I like watched the show. So yeah, it was interesting. I just can't get it out of my head when his father has a heart attack and they're waiting for the doctor to come out, and he's just like hands on the hip, like cowboy in it on the door frame, and I'm like, bro, what are you doing? What's going on over there?
That was awkward. It's the first time you see George Reeves, and he's introduced just to react to his father's death. It was a really weird scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like it was hard. I don't know. That was weird, and that's all I could think about. So hopefully, if we watch any more of this, that changes my mind. But
okay,
unfortunately, also he's not as hot as his dad. So
okay.
Sorry, bruh.
Josh, what do you think of George Reeves?
Yeah, I think we only see him in costume for a single shot. So it's hard to like judge him as Superman. But I think as Clark, he's great. He's both charming and dorky at the same time. It's like this weird line that he's straddling, and it totally works. Like he's at a job interview and he's talking to the like secretary or the receptionist there, and he's kind of like, oh, I guess I got to try next day, but like in like a kind of like a weird cheesy way, but it's comes off as charming at the same time. Like I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like this balance of this lovable dork.
Sure.
And it works.
Now,
and it's also great too that like you can buy I buy him more as Clark Kent than I do like maybe anybody else who's done Superman, because they're so like built and huge and muscly that when they have the Clark Kent like costumes on, you can still kind of see like their big muscles through their like button up or whatever. And I totally buy him as Clark.
We should point out that George Reeves actually said that he would kind of refuse to play Clark as like a bumbling idiot. So that's why his Clark Kent is actually not that much different from Superman, which obviously Christopher Reeve did not follow that, because Christopher Reeve plays him as a complete bumbling fool, which I do prefer, but I can appreciate George Reeves' choice. Now, when they did the 90s animated show, they followed the George Reeves version. And if you remember, Clark Kent in the animated show was not a bumbling idiot. He was kind of just like a dashing reporter, whatever you want to say. But yeah, he definitely pulls off the charm. He's just one of those people that everyone would like, everybody, right? And I do got to say, it's a weird choice to have him. He gets basically, he's waiting to get this job interview. He's waiting. And then he leaves the reception area and he walks out on the ledge and then sneaks in through the window to get his interview with Perry White, which is creative writing, but it's also weird because that's something Superman should do, not Clark Kent, right? It's something where, like, if you're going to have Superman show off his powers, you would have him come through the window. But to have Clark Kent come in through the window, it's like, why is Clark Kent walking around on the 28th floor of his building? So
it's also the first time we see him use his powers. He doesn't even really use them, right? He just crawls
once.
Well, no, but to get to the other side, he just walks along the building, so he doesn't even actually use his powers then.
True.
Yeah, so if you're a kid in the 50s and you've never read a Superman comic book, which probably unlikely, but like maybe you haven't, you have no idea who this guy is.
True.
And like what he does. And like you're like, why is he walking on he could like, that's dangerous. And then he jumps out of a window. And that's the first like superhuman thing that he does.
Yeah. So as we said, he doesn't use his powers much. We don't get to see much of them. Obviously, in later episodes, we see bad guys shooting him with guns, the bullets bouncing off his chest. We see him flying, lifting things. In this episode, we don't see much of that. But going in chronological order, we've already talked about Jor-El and Lara and how hot they are. I like their outfits. Now let's jump to, we're not going to say too much about them, but Ma and Pa, a.k.a. Eben and Sarah Kent. Now, the thing that I noticed about this episode is, considering Superman grew up in Smallville, which in the last few decades is always portrayed as being in Kansas, but was not always supposed to be in Kansas. This is the first time we've really seen Pa portrayed as, for lack of a better term, a hillbilly, right? Like he just looks like, right? Like, so that was the one thing that struck me as odd. Did anyone else think that was kind of weird?
No, I just thought he was good old country boy.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel
like
like
the first thing we see him do is save a baby from a burning rocket. So that's pretty noble, right?
It was also, it was very cool that he saved him. It was also odd, if you remember, the ship blew up and then disappeared. Remember that?
right, yeah.
Yes.
That was so
left
odd.
no trace.
Right.
And like the fire effects were really good, which means that it was real fire.
Right. Yes.
Right.
So I
Thankfully,
was a
a
little
fake baby
concerned.
inside.
Oh yeah, very fake baby.
So they were a little bit different than what we're used to seeing from Ma and Pa Kent. Now let's jump to the staff of the Daily Planet in the order that we meet them from my faulty memory. John Hamilton plays Perry White. I mean, he's pretty much the same type of character as Jackie Cooper played him in the Superman movies. So I thought he was perfect in this role. Becca, what'd you think of?
It's a little over dramatic for me.
Okay.
But the show is also very cheesy, so like it's the 50s. How old was TV at the time?
It was invented like 2 years before this, so
yeah. So like a lot of people probably grew up with stage acting, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And then transitioned over, especially like older actors did a lot of stage acting and then transitioned over to film and TV. So it's like, yeah, that kind of acting is very, very stage heavy. But for me, it was kind of a weird juxtaposition because like you have Jimmy and Lois, and they are not stage acting; they are TV acting, and so it made him feel like such a cartoon.
Yeah, when he's juggling like all of the phones. Yeah,
I thought that was funny though.
Yeah, it's a good bit. And then the like receptionist buzzer is also kind of like coming in, and he plays a good like curmudgeon, goofball, kind of grumpy old man.
Yeah, I think he's perfect for it. But I agree, over the top. But that's fine. We're gonna save the best for last. But next, we're gonna talk about Jimmy Olsen, played by Jack Larson. As we pointed out, Jimmy Olsen was not created in the comics. He was created in the radio show, then introduced in the comics, and then brought back in the TV show. And this is actually what made him really popular and what led to him getting his own comic book series. It was Jack Larson's portrayal of Jimmy, who played him as kind of the comic relief of the show. And I really like him in this role. I think he's really funny and kind of like naive, and bumbling and still kind of learning the trade. And, he this is where we get the famous "Don't call me Chief," always calling Perry White Chief, "Don't call me Chief," that whole bit. So I personally loved him in this role. Becca, what'd you think of Jack Larson as Jimmy Olsen?
I like Jack Larson, and I was trying to figure out how I knew him.
Okay.
And like most things, it's because he's gay.
This is true. He is gay. Yeah.
So I was like, why is that name so familiar? And then I'm like, right, when you're young and gay and in the closet and you're looking up, like, you're like, who else was gay? And you just go through a list of the things that you like. So I liked superheroes. So like so shout out to Jack Larson. What a guy. And I'm so happy that was portrayed as such a popular character.
Right.
I don't know much about his life, but I hope he had a really good. He's dead. Yes, I hope he did have a good, not so. I'm sure it was hard to be gay in the 50s.
Yes, I imagine so. Yes.
but I like Jimmy, and he's in one scene and then in the car, but like he does have a good joke where he's like, well, I don't want to get a ticket, and she's like, all right, a man's just dangling for his life, but we don't want to get a speeding ticket. So yeah, it was kind of cute.
You know, and that's the thing is like, I love Jimmy Olsen in the movies. I even like Jimmy Olsen in the Superman Returns by Bryan Singer, but apparently Jimmy Olsen was in Zack Snyder's Man of Steel.
He immediately gets killed.
Yes.
Like what a piece!
He gets shot.
I didn't even want to talk about Man of Steel because I don't even consider it.
Didn't they cast somebody
I'll talk
like?
about it.
Didn't they cast somebody like kind of famous for that role too?
I don't think so. But the fact that he had no clue what to do with the character is just so telling. But anyway, just like everything else.
We can look him up right now. It was Michael Cassidy.
Okay. Is he famous?
He was in AOC.
What's that?
A TV show.
Maybe not.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway.
Oh, that was in Batman versus Superman.
Okay. We're not going to spend too much time talking about Man of Steel just because I hate it. But anyway, we are going to now talk about my favorite actor in the show, and that's Phyllis Coates as Lois Lane. Phyllis Coates unfortunately only played Lois, like we said, for the first 26 episodes. Then she was replaced by the previous Lois Lane, Noelle Neal, who played Lois as much more timid and kind of sweet and sympathetic, more of like a typical role that a woman would play in the 1950s, whereas Phyllis Coates was more of like a tougher Howard Hawksian type woman, which I really liked. She's my favorite Lois Lane. My second favorite is probably Terry Hatcher. Margot Kidder is my third, but I love Phyllis Coates as Lois Lane. Becca, what'd you think of Phyllis Coates?
She was there.
Okay.
Sorry.
I know she didn't have much to do, but
yeah, I did like how she her introduction is her fixing a man's stupid problem.
Yeah.
She comes in and he's like, I can't get it. And she's just like, oh my God, what? Now let's do news. Like, I do like how that's her introduction, is that she immediately fixes a problem and then moves on. So that's cool. Especially for the 50s. And I'm sure as the show goes on, there's things that I probably won't like.
I also like that she immediately is suspicious of Clark. Like, right. She's like, it's a little suspicious that you left later than us, then got there before literally everybody else in the city. And then you're also talking about how there's this guy that can fly around the city. And like, that's the first time he's shown up. It's the first time you've shown up here. Like, she's already putting the pieces together, which I love. That's great.
Well, I can say that for the sake of writing, I think it's better for her never to suspect it. But for the sake of her character, it makes her smarter. And I think if you were to compare her to Noelle Neal, I think you'll see a drastic difference in how they're portrayed. And that's basically why I like her so much, because I've seen Noelle Neal play Lois, and I don't really like her nearly as much as Phyllis Coates. So that's why Phyllis Coates is my favorite Lois. Completely different character. Tough and smart, like you said, and doesn't take crap from anyone, so that's good. But anyway, that pretty much covers the cast. Unfortunately, like we said, there are no supervillains. There's no Lex Luthor, there's no Bizarro, there's no Brainiac, and almost nobody other than the people we mentioned really come back. There's a few other regulars like Inspector Henderson. I think there's a couple scientists and stuff like that, but for the most part, it's kind of a new story every week. There's not much continuity. However, I do recommend, if you enjoyed this episode, at the very least, watch the first season, if not season 1 and 2, because they are really good. Season 1's the best, but 2 is almost as good. So if you enjoyed this one, I would continue watching for sure. Is there anything else anyone wanted to say about the first episode of The Adventures of Superman? Becca?
Why'd you put me first?
There's only 2 of you. You had a 50-50 chance of being picked.
I blew it. No. I think that's it. I don't remember.
Do you ever have any intention of watching more?
Well, you're going to make us, right? So probably.
Well, only after we review the first 79 other superhero movies and TV shows. Then maybe we'll get back to this. So it'll be a while.
Oh,
Yeah.
then as long as I don't have to pay for it, I don't have any money. And there's a lot of movies that are coming out this year that I also have to see for
Yes, that's true.
the
So
Syndicate.
I mean,
I have to spend
Becca,
my money on.
it's kind of a rhetorical question. You know, it doesn't.
I don't lie. I'm honest.
Okay.
No.
I'll tell you what you
No.
want to hear, Mike. Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
watch more.
There you go, Josh. Yeah, Josh is gonna watch it. All right.
No, but for real though, this was really fun. I don't know if I would go out of my way to watch more. But if it was on, I would definitely watch it. Like it's really fun, and I am curious to see what they're gonna do, especially knowing that his like big supervillains don't really make an appearance in the show. So it would be interesting to see where they kind of take the direction of this version of Superman.
If
So, you
I
know,
had kids, maybe I'd make them watch it.
I think kids would love it. Yeah, I agree. And we should again point out how popular the show was. And I mean, Superman comics were huge in the 40s, but I think that this is really what made Superman a household name. You know, I mean, to this day, if you talk to people from that generation, just like everyone knows I Love Lucy, everybody knows Superman. Everyone knows Perry White. Everyone knows Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen. That's why his supporting casts are all household names. I think it's largely because of this show. So, I think it did its job. And I mean, I've done segments on on Comic Book Syndicate before asking why Superman isn't as popular, and there's a million different answers. But one of them is that obviously to me, they don't really know who the character is anymore. This Superman, this smiling, friendly, charming Superman that everyone likes, I think that's maybe not the original version of Superman because he was more of a vigilante when he started out, but this is the most popular version of Superman, and I wish he was done more like this today. But whatever, you can't have everything, right?
I disagree with you. I love modern Superman, especially right now. I don't know if you've read anything in the last 2 years, but ever since his son has come out, because of course that's what I'm going to talk about. Superman being a supportive father to his son, and his son teaching his son how to be a good man and to grow up to be a superhero too, has been very, very heartwarming to read about these last few years. Like the issue where John Kent comes out is I cried just because I never got to come out to my parents, so it's written really well, and Superman as a dad is written really, really, really well. And I know that a lot of people, maybe Mike, don't really like the aging of superheroes.
Definitely not.
But Superman has always kind of been a dad, regardless of if he had children or not. He's just got that vibe. He's America's dad. And I think him and Lois being in this incredibly healthy, wonderful, loving marriage with the son that's what comic books needs to be right now. Right?
Well,
so I
I
think
haven't
Superman's he's still what he's supposed to be.
I haven't read those stories, so I can't comment. But there have been some great Superman comics. Don't get me wrong, like All-Star Superman, and right now there's actually World's Finest by Mark Waid is a really good Superman comic.
Well, my favorite comic of all time is Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. Love that comic.
Of course. Those are, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's no shortage of great Superman comics, but I'm just saying on average, I don't usually enjoy the most modern Superman comics, but I haven't read the ones you're talking about. But
I'm just saying that they're still good Superman.
Okay.
And they're still true to Superman, good Superman. Obviously, there's lots of DC comics. DC's the last couple of years have been doing a lot of Elseworld, offshoot.
Sure.
There's vampires, there's zombies, blah blah. And those Superman comics, those are all interesting takes on the character. But if you're looking for the heart and soul of who Superman is, he's still around.
All right. You heard it from Becca.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go.
All the boys saying Superman's boring suck. I
agree with you on that, Becca. 100%. Even, God bless him, Darwin Cook, even he said he thinks Superman's boring.
Oh?
And Darwin, you know Darwin Cook, right?
Nope.
He did New Frontier. He's a famous DC artist that died, unfortunately, like about 5 years ago.
Oh, okay. I won't talk mad about him then.
Yeah, but he has done some Superman stories that are really good. And I was at a panel, and it was like 50 people, and basically he said, I like Superman, but you guys all agree Superman's boring, right? And from the back of the room, no. Sorry,
The people who think that goodness and kindness and doing the right thing is boring are the reason why the world is the way it is.
I'll make sure that goes in your tombstone. Anyway.
That and Jor-El was super hot.
There you go. And put Lois Lane by Phyllis Coates was super hot. You can put that on my tombstone, okay?
Okay.
Anyway, okay. So
What do you want on your tombstone, Josh? Who's hot? Who did you think's hot?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll think of something.
all right. Okay, speaking of hot, next week, guess what? I'm going to keep it a surprise. I'm never going to tell you what the next episode is. But there's plenty to pick from next week because we're going to be doing the Adam West Batman.
Ooh,
Oh
the
my
movie?
God.
The pilot episode. Not
Oh,
the
okay.
Yes.
Don't get too excited.
I have seen this one. I've seen a lot of Adam West
Yes.
Batman.
The
Mostly
movie is
because
one of my
Eartha Kitt is hot.
favorites.
Yes, but I think too much attention's focused on the movie because so many people talk about it. So I wanted to do the TV show, but this is the pilot episode featuring the Riddler. That's all we're gonna say about it. It's gonna be a good time, and we have a special guest lined up, but I don't want to say who it is in case he forgets we're recording. So I won't say who it is. But anyway, be sure to join us on next week's episode of Taped Crusaders, featuring, again, like we said, a review of the first episode of Batman from 1966. All of our episodes are available at www.comicbooksyndicate.com, as well as Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Maybe not yet, but they will be eventually. So there you go. We dedicate this episode to G.I. Jolie, and we will see her next week.
She will not listen
Perfect.
and know that we did this, but that's what makes it better.
There you go.
All right.
Okay.
Until next time.